HOA called 911 on me for fishing, but I own the lake and had them escorted off my land. Update 1. She called the cops on me for fishing. Apparently casting a line into a lake now qualifies as suspicious activity, if someone with a clipboard decides you don't belong. 1 minute I'm enjoying the peace, the next I'm being accused of lurking near children and threatening the community, all while sitting on land I thought was mine. Spoiler, it is. What followed included fake violation notices, a homemade patrol squad, and someone who ran an HOA like it was a private military operation. Ever dealt with someone so loud and wrong it made your tea go cold? Drop your city book or your craziest HOA moment in the comments. This story spirals fast, and trust me, when reality hit her, it hit harder than a trout on a dry line. Buckle up. This one's got bite. The whole mess started on a peaceful Sunday morning in early March. I'd been living in my grandfather's old lakeside cabin for about 4 months now, ever since I inherited the property after he passed. As a software engineer, who works remotely, I thought moving out to this quiet spot would be perfect for avoiding the chaos of city life. My grandfather had always talked about how peaceful it was out here, and honestly, after dealing with deadlines and traffic for years, I was ready for some tranquility. The cabin sits on what I thought was just a nice chunk of land with a private lake, perfect for my new hobby of fishing. Every Sunday morning had become my ritual. I'd grab my grandfather's old fishing rod, make a thermos of coffee, and head down to the water around 7 a.m. The lake was gorgeous in the early morning light, with mist rising off the surface and birds calling from the trees. It was exactly the kind of peace I'd been looking for. The Willowbrook Estates HOA development sat adjacent to my property, maybe 20 houses in total, but they seemed far enough away that we wouldn't bother each other, or so I thought. That particular Sunday started like any other. I was sitting on my usual spot by the water's edge, coffee steaming in the cool morning air, when I heard voices approaching. Loud voices. I looked up to see a woman marching toward me with 2 other people trailing behind her. She was probably in her late 30s, blonde hair pulled back tight, wearing what looked like expensive workout clothes that somehow managed to look cheap on her. The way she walked screamed authority complex, and her voice carried across the water like she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. "Excuse me," she called out when she got within shouting distance. "What are you doing in our community recreation area?" I blinked, thinking maybe I'd misheard her. Community recreation area. I was sitting on my own property by my own lake. I sat down my coffee and turned to face her fully, trying to keep my voice calm and friendly. "I'm sorry, I think there might be some confusion. This is my property. I inherited it from my grandfather." The woman's face immediately twisted into the kind of expression that told me this wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. She planted her hands on her hips and gave me a look like I'd just claimed to be the president. "Your property? This lake is shared community property for Willowbrook Estates residents only. You're trespassing on private property." Behind her, the 2 other people were nodding along, though they looked less certain than she did. I could feel my patience starting to fray, but I kept my voice level. "Ma'am, I can assure you this is my land. I have all the documentation, if you'd like to see it." She actually laughed at that, a sharp, unpleasant sound that made a few birds take flight from nearby trees. "Anyone can claim ownership," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Anyone can make up stories about inheriting property. Do you have documentation with you right now? Can you prove it this instant?" I gestured toward the cabin. "The papers are in my house, which is right over there, because I live here." She shook her head like I was a child lying about homework. "Anyone can rent a place and pretend to own it. I'm Ruby Sinclair, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA, and I know every property owner in this area. You're not one of them." The conversation was getting more surreal by the minute. Here I was, sitting on my own land, being told I was trespassing by someone who apparently had never bothered to research the property boundaries. I tried one more time to be reasonable. "Mrs. Sinclair, I understand your concern, but I can easily prove ownership. If you'd like to walk over to my house, I can show you the deed right now." She crossed her arms and shook her head firmly. "I'm not going anywhere with a stranger who's refusing to leave our community property. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the police." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. "Ma'am, you're welcome to call the police. They can verify my ownership just as easily as you can." I figured that would end it. Surely, when faced with the prospect of having to explain to law enforcement why she was harassing a property owner, she'd back down. I was wrong. Ruby Sinclair pulled out her phone and, without breaking eye contact with me, dialed 911. "Yes, I need to report a suspicious man lurking near homes with children," she said into the phone, her voice suddenly taking on a concerned, frightened tone that was completely different from the aggressive way she'd been talking to me. "He's refusing to leave our community property, and he's been sitting here watching our neighborhood. I'm afraid he might be dangerous." I stared at her in disbelief. She was actually lying to the emergency dispatcher about me being some kind of threat. The casual way she twisted the situation into something sinister was breathtaking in its audacity. As I listened to Ruby lie to 911 about me being suspicious, I realized this wasn't just about fishing anymore. This woman just declared war on the wrong person, and she had no idea what she just started. Monday morning brought a rude awakening in the form of Sheriff Hank Bradley standing on my front porch. He was a solid middle-aged guy with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen every type of small-town drama imaginable. When he asked me to temporarily stay away from the lake area to avoid further disputes, I could see in his expression that he was just trying to keep the peace. I told him I'd comply for now, but that I'd be proving my ownership very soon. He nodded with the tired patience of someone who dealt with HOA complaints before and drove away, probably hoping this would all blow over quietly. Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more.